Homegrown tomatoes, homegrown tomatoes. What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
Good
Hello.
afternoon. Sorry we're late today.
It's a rainy day. Mark was out running some errands. I had to go to the post office and
We had stuff to do.
stuff to do.
So this is
Question and answer Thursday.
Hi, it's Thursday. It's Q&A Thursday.
Q&A Thursday. Q&A Thursday.
So I was talking to my sister earlier. She was asking me. She started her tower garden.
She's got a tower garden. You've seen tower gardens. We showed them. They're great. She's growing stuff. It's growing so fast she doesn't know what it is.
Well, she wishes that she did put little labels underneath each of the places where you stick the pods for the.
Them identifying sticks is key.
Yeah, well, she knows what she's got. It's just the different varieties because she did buy a bunch of different varieties of lettuce and every so often she does have to rub her hands on things to make sure what's what, whether it's mint or basil or.
Well, the good thing about the tower garden is that it's not likely to be a weed. Although we have seen weeds.
Different type of weed.
Well, aggressive. No, not that. No, don't you remember we've had when winds have blown by, we've had tree.
Yeah.
We've had some things growing out of the tower garden that weren't
like,
supposed to. Those types of weeds is supposed to be growing there if you're growing them.
I don't know about that, but
Have I told my sphagnum peat moss story?
I don't know.
Sphagnum peat moss. If you know your garden, it's a natural thing. It helps keep it aerated and blah blah blah. Look it up. That's not the point of the story. But most of the sphagnum peat moss that comes around in this country not in this country comes from Canada. And I was talking to one of the manufacturers I guess don't manufacture it. They harvest it. Peat harvesters up in Canada, and I will refrain from saying their name to keep everyone innocent. But he said, so I'm talking to this guy, and I feel like I'm talking to the Great White North. I take off hoser and all that. And he says, and I was telling him about our business and how we were teaching people that you don't necessarily have to have a tract of land to be able to grow, and then you can grow in things like tower gardens and raised bed gardens. And I was talking about container gardens at the point when this occurred. I was saying something about people even who have patios or city dwellers, even if they have a balcony, they can grow in containers. And so we were having a whole container conversation, and the fellow on the line said, well, one of the things that the pot growers really know is that, and I said, whoa, I said, hold on, in the United States, you start talking about pot growers. I know they're containers, but we're talking, they're not pots. I mean, I guess they are pots, but that's not what they're saying. Yeah, well, they are pots, and I said that we call them containers down here in the States, and he said, people think you're talking about marijuana, and he said, I am talking about marijuana. I said, well, already then.
Alrighty, and it's legal in Canada, and that conversation you had was 7 years ago or 8 years ago now, and
oh God, that was a long time ago.
It was a really long time ago, and think about how much the laws have changed
the guy when I was checking out at Tractor Supply the other day, I was making mention of something about our raised bed gardens that we build, and he was telling me he used to be a gardener, and he used to. I said something, I guess, grow your own, which is our slogan. And he said, I used to do that out in Colorado. And I said, oh, really? He worked for one of the legal growers.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, but now he's out here, he's a cashier at Tractor Supply in New Hampshire, so who the hell knows.
But anyway, so we were talking about her tower garden, and she was asking me about the lettuce and when it would be ready. She's new to gardening. And I was simply telling her that, it's up to you, but you can either pick some of the larger leaves, outer leaves, say you have like Taco Tuesday or something and you want a few leaves. It's okay to take the outer leaves, the bigger outer leaves, and
because
leave the inner leaves.
Then you're leaving it to give you more.
Well, yeah, but it's also okay to just leave it, and because she was like, well, will those big leaves get old? I'm like, no, they're just the bigger leaves.
You can take a whole head, but I prefer. I think what we've always done is we've had enough lettuce growing that we take 3 or 4 leaves from this plant, that plant, the other plant. By the time you're done, you can't tell you've touched your lettuce patch, but you've got a bowl full of leaves.
Of leaves, right. So ideally, if you can set it up so...
And as they say, let us leave and go eat lettuce leaves.
That's right. And, so taking
That's for you
out
salad
leaves,
guys out there.
And gals. I also told her not to take anything more. Oh, then she was asking me about harvesting the basil.
Well, are we gonna come back to lettuce, or are we gonna say what?
No, we can stay on this.
Well, I just want to say, but we're talking about how you know when lettuce is ready to take. How do you know when your lettuce is done? Because lettuce.
Oh, when it's done.
Lettuce is not.
Before it's done.
Well, lettuce is first of all. Lettuce is you're not going to grow if you're in a hot area. You are not going to grow lettuce in the middle of the summer. Within
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Generally speaking, so
there's certain varieties.
Lettuce tends to be more of a cold weather crop, cooler weather crop, and so it's done at a certain time. And we talked about you pick a little layer, keep it going. Eventually, it's going to go, and it's going to tell you how it's ready to go. How is it going to tell you how it's ready to go? Bolt. It's just going to get out of the garden and run. It's going to take off and bolted. What happened to the lettuce? It bolted. It was last thing going that way. Or that way.
So I was putting my arm up.
Right.
So straighten my arm. I fell yesterday. Stretch my arm. So your lettuce going to go bolt.
Yeah, it's going to put up a little antenna. And it's going to have little pods and stuff on that. And so what is that? Well, that's your lettuce's...
It's going to seed.
Well, it's trying to procreate. It's trying to repeat itself.
It will flower.
Yes, it will. And if the wind is right, you may have lettuce growing on the side of your driveway. Yeah, we do.
And it keeps the bunnies away from our garden.
I know. Anytime you see a garden plant get out, and some of them do, and we're going to talk about some of them that really do here. There was a question about rhubarb we're going to get to, but all of them do, and tomatoes sometimes do. And I remember we had a tomato plant where we used to live that. What would you say? It was 75, 100 feet away from the main garden, and it came up in a patch of gravel. Now, for that, I think a bird took a tomato off a plant and probably ate it, shat it, did something that made the seed go that far. But it was a beautiful thing, and Christine's like, kill it. And I'm like, no.
It's such a pain. First of all, we got so many plants in the garden to begin with, and then...
I'm not killing a tomato.
But then you got little, volunteer tomato
Volunteers, that's my point. We call them volunteers when they come up on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what did that volunteer tomato plant do? It was very...
He staked it, and he did all sorts of things
gave it love and attention.
He did give it love and attention.
I did.
And we were able to harvest quite a few cherry tomatoes from that thing.
Yeah, so you never know.
So you never know. But... So anyway, no, but the basil, before we go on to the rhubarb, so she was asking about the basil. And, when you're cooking, you usually don't need
Wait, to finish the bolting, when the lettuce is bolted, then what do? You're done. Then you cut it out, you get rid of it.
By then, the lettuce is kind of like bitter.
But when it sends up that periscope, that's when you're done with the plant.
Done.
And get it out of there, pull the whole thing out by the roots, and that's when you put maybe a little more compost in, and you plant your next plant, your whatever that is, in your succession planting plan. Wow, it's a succession planting plan.
So,
succession planting plan.
Basil?
Yes, talk about the basil.
All right, so basil.
I want to say succession planting plan.
She's growing basil in the tower garden, and this goes for whether it's in tower garden or whether it's in your garden, raised bed, or maybe you're growing it in a container. You only need to take as much basil as you need for cooking, which usually isn't a lot. Let's say you're going to take a nice harvest because you want to make it like a basil pesto or something like that. So you never want to take more than
I have another theme for another program.
Wait, you never want to take more than a third of the plant. You want to leave behind 2/3 of the plant. I find when I leave behind 2/3 of the plant, it's a good ratio of knowing how much to take. So, And that way the plant can continue to thrive. Also, don't let your basil flower. Well, the basil flowers are really fragrant and they're great.
Don't let your basil grow up
Takes
to
away
be
from
flowers.
the oils that are on the leaves, which is what you really want to use for
Yeah, you
culinary.
pinch them off. They'll put up these little. They don't actually. I mean, they are flower heads, but you don't want to wait for them to get white. They will, but they'll put up this little thing that looks like
It's a little
looks like a little nice bud, if you know
yeah.
what a
Come
bud.
shooting up right off of the top of the leaves and stuff, and you
Just
wanna
pinch it
them
off.
out.
And if you have a lot of basil growing, which we have had some years, I've just taken a mason jar out with me to the garden, and I pinched off all the top of those heads and put them in the kitchen, and it was
Oh, it's really
oh,
fragrant.
it was aromatically just every time you walked in, the house just was like
Oh, God. You know, I just read this. I was reading some camping thing, and
camping.
well, it was talking about, it was homesteading actually, and they were saying they were coming up with ways to keep mosquitoes and stuff away when you're around the campfire. And they were saying to pick some sage and rosemary. And was it rosemary? I think it was rosemary. Yeah, sage and rosemary. Stick it in some tin foil, and you wet the tin foil. Poke some holes in that, and supposedly you put that in the fire, and it's the smoke from the herbs that are coming up. Apparently, a lot of people thought it didn't have to be sage and rosemary. It could be basically anything. It's just really the smoke that keeps away the
Parsley,
bugs.
sage, rosemary, and thyme.
How about rhubarb?
How about rhubarb?
So the rhubarb.
How about some rhubarb?
question,
You know, rhubarb. A lot of people think rhubarb. What the hell? She was one of them. You had no use. We grew rhubarb. Rhubarb.
No, well, the only
Till
reason-
she had. Let me talk. Strawberry rhubarb preserves.
Oh my God.
Oh.
It's like cheesecake. I didn't have cheesecake until I was 25, and I wish to God I never had any.
And she grew up in New York City, so explain to me how
I know.
that's
What
possible.
doesn't it sound disgusting? Cheesecake, it's just gross. So rhubarb, like so Barbara Raventi from Sumner, Washington. She says that her neighbor makes all sorts of homemade goodies, including jellies and jams.
Jellies and
And
jams.
she wants to make strawberry rhubarb preserves. So this woman already has a strawberry patch, and she wants to find out about growing rhubarb. And she started growing it, but she's not sure. She's like, it's kind of weird looking.
Well, it looks like kind of celery that's got an issue.
Well, so the main part of the rhubarb, the part that you use when you're making preserves and all that stuff, is simply the stalk. The leafy part, that actually is poisonous.
It's mildly poisonous.
Mildly.
You'd have to eat about.
Yeah, but you don't cook with that. You cut that stuff off.
Certainly
and
make you
use
feel
the
bad.
Stalks, and that's the part of the plant that you use. Now I planted rhubarb. Not that I make rhubarb preserves or anything.
Yeah, I feel like you're like.
What?
I feel like my guitar is hiding.
No, that's fine. But a client of ours wanted to grow rhubarb, so in order to completely understand the plant, I decided to grow rhubarb in our garden in Connecticut.
Talking about plants that'll pop up in places, we were
Well, I
talking about
didn't know that.
Well, we were talking about volunteers, and see, this is the way I segue. You see the way I did that?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's called a segue. It's an industry
I
thing.
thought that was the thing you rode.
No, it's a thing you fall off of, and I think they catch on fire
I
too.
should
No,
ride
it's
that.
a different kind of segue. No, boy, you digress. Talk about me. Go ahead, rhubarb.
No, you were saying something.
No, you're talking about rhubarb.
I finished talking about rhubarb.
Well,
oh,
I was saying
it
that
was-
rhubarb can be invasive. is
Well,
what I
it
was
popped
saying.
out of our garden.
It pops out a lot of places, and we've seen up here in New Hampshire where Facebook can be.
Like the coconut telegram.
Well, it's a coconut telegraph for where we live, and I've gotten to the point where I think the only way that I can deal with Facebook is I just deal with it as a community thing. And we have some nice communities in New Hampshire here for our lake area, the Newfound Lake region, and New Hampshire in general, nature photographers and people that are into nature and all kinds of things, and trying to identify different things. So every day we're seeing pictures of frogs and unidentified bugs and plants,
And
people
weeds.
and weeds, and people want to know what they are. And this one woman the other day thought she had rhubarb poking up all over her property, and she had planted it, and that seemed very feasible. But looking at the pictures a little more closely, and we found some more candidates.
Burdock.
Burdock weed.
Right, burdock weed, and then Japanese knotweed. So apparently, when we did a Google search of
Not the good weed.
plants that look like rhubarb, I found one article that listed about 9 or 10 other plants that, if to look at, would be, kind of hard to differentiate at first. You really want to look for, first of all, if you didn't plant it somewhere, or it's not somewhere in your neighborhood really close
Yeah,
by,
odds are good. It's
odds are it's
probably not rhubarb. But if you or anybody you know planted rhubarb near it, it's kind of like that.
Possibly.
We probably have not. Have we told the morning glory story?
No,
we're talking about that's invasive plants. That'll be a whole section someday. But all I can tell you is morning glories. They say, what's the story, morning glory?
Yeah.
The story is,
They're all over the
unless you want to see them forever, do not plant them.
unless it's in a container. And then carefully where that container is. No, so the rhubarb, you want to look for the red stem, and obviously, if you planted it, then it's probably, that's what it is.
But it could be all over the place, and if you like it, that's what it is. Give it to somebody who has strawberries, and they'll make preserves and yum yum.
Mm-hmm. So that's it for our questions today. We're always looking for new questions, so please check our Facebook page out. Check us out on Instagram, Pinterest. Oh, check us out on our new YouTube channel. We have a new YouTube channel, so I've been posting these, the rebroadcasts on the YouTube channel, so you can always come back and check things out.
Homegrown tomatoes, homegrown tomatoes. What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.
We'll see you next week. Ooh, Bye. Oh, my phone broke when I fell.